I spent over $1,000 on AI tools for my business last month. I use these for content creation projects and also for vibe coding. And I'm going to show you which ones I rely on the most and how they're helping me save money. And I'll also show you some of the things I've shipped with them. Every day I write a daily newsletter. It's approximately 500 words long. And I use Grammarly to check for typos and mistakes in my newsletter. Grammarly costs me about $30 per month. And I find its AI-powered writing assistant is a bit of a time saver. So as an example, here is one of my newsletters, and I can quickly work through sentences and paragraphs and accept changes and suggestions from Grammarly's AI at a click. And that basically helps me go from writing some content to published much faster. Now, a year or two ago, I used to rely on a human editor to check my content. That got quite expensive, and I ended up spending $1,000 or $2,000 a month on editing. To be honest, for short and medium form content, it's faster and cheaper to use AI. Now, if I was writing something longer, like a book, and I have self-published a couple of books, which you can see behind me, I'd still hire a human editor. But for something short form like social media posts, or medium form like a newsletter, I'd use an AI assistant like Grammarly. Last month, I also used Lovable quite a bit. It's basically a vibe coding project where you write prompts and it'll help you create apps and websites. And I use this to create some prototypes and early versions of my vibe coding projects. Now, Lovable is going to cost you $25 per month, assuming you don't go over all of your credits. It won't take you long to get to the $50 per month tier if you're working on a complicated vibe coding project. Now, I have another video on the channel where I show you exactly how you can use Lovable. And there are some other competitors that I recommend you check out. For example, Bolt and Replit. But I found Lovable suited my workflow quite nicely. I used it to build an early prototype of this website. So this is called mytriathloncalculator.com. And it's basically a place where triathletes can go to calculate their nutrition and hydration for races. That's because I spend my free time doing triathlons. So I knew a little bit about the area. Now, I was able to vibe code my triathlon calculator with Lovable, but then when I got it to a place I was happy with, I moved to a more advanced vibe coding tool, which I'll show you in a moment. But it wasn't bad for $25 per month. And to be honest, if I were to hire a developer for an early prototype, it would have cost me several $1,000s. The next AI tool that I rely on is Claude. It costs me $20 per month. And I use Claude in a number of different ways for my business. Basically, I've trained it on 150,000 words of my daily emails. Now, I had to upload these as a series of Google Docs. And then I can log into this Claude project and I can say something like, give me 10 bullet point ideas for YouTube videos I can record. And then the Claude AI project will start to analyze all of my emails and extract themes and topics that I can turn into YouTube videos. So basically, this helps me ideate my content. I have a couple of other Claude projects that I use for content editing, for writing headlines and subject lines. And I find it tends to be a little bit more useful than ChatGPT. However, I have found that the limits Claude imposes can be quite restrictive, and I'll regularly hit usage limit reached. And the only way to get around this is by using another AI tool. So I also use ChatGPT, and I pay for the pro version of ChatGPT, and I pretty much created the same projects inside of ChatGPT. Now I'll show you a different project that I have in ChatGPT. So this is called Business Coach. Basically, I spend about 60 minutes training Business Coach on who I am, what my business does, and what my goals are. And then when I have a question about the content strategy or a product to create, or something that I want to do for my business, I can basically prompt GPT. So I'll show you one example. Give me some ideas. Give me some YouTube ideas based on what I've been up to. Now ChatGPT understands what I've been doing and my business goals, and then it'll start to suggest ideas for my YouTube channel based on what it knows about me. I'm also paying for the Claude API, and I spend about $40 or $50 per month on tokens for the API. And I use it in a couple of different ways. So this is a website that I vibe coded called Prompt Writing Studio. And on Prompt Writing Studio, I have a number of interactive tools that teach users how to write effective prompts and to figure out the ROI for their business. As an example, this is a calculator that you can use to compare costs across different AI tools. And I've powered this with the Claude API. And basically, it costs me a certain amount of dollars depending how often people use these tools. I also use the Claude API on GitHub. So GitHub is where I host my vibe coding projects. And I've set Claude up to work on GitHub. And then when I tag Claude in GitHub, It can analyze my vibe coding project for bugs, issues, and other things that I want to fix, and then provide me with some next steps and suggestions. Now, the more times I run this, the more tokens it will consume or cost. And I can actually do the exact same thing in Terminal as well. And I find if I'm using Claude for bugs and also for my tools, I'll spend about $20 or $30. But if I'm working on a specific project, my costs could increase a little bit more. Still, I can tell you from experience, it's a lot cheaper than hiring a developer. So as an example, I hired a developer for a vibe coding project fix a few weeks ago, and he charged me over $500. So if you're prepared to roll your sleeves up, you could save a bit of money by paying for Claude API tokens. Perhaps the AI tool that I'm spending the most on is Cursor. And this is what I use for all of my vibe coding projects. Now, I started out with Lovable when I wanted to roll up my sleeves and figure out how vibe coding works. But I started to find that Lovable got a bit restrictive. So as an example, I wanted to build a new site, which is basically a book and author roundup site called readingcurator.com. And I had a lot of posts on an old WordPress site that I was going to use on this new project. And it wasn't really possible to import a huge database of files into Lovable easily enough. So that's why I turned to Cursor. Now, Cursor is actually pretty cheap to get started with. It's only when you get into vibe coding that your costs will increase. So you can try the hobby version, which is what I did. And then I quickly upgraded to the pro version for $20 per month. And this gave me access to some AI agents that I could use in Cursor and also in the background. It wasn't long before I upgraded to the Ultra version. And as you can see, this meant my costs started to increase. But I found I was using it for several hours a day to finish out readingcurator.com. Now, the Ultra version is great because when you're in Claude, you get access to all of the latest models. And it actually works out cheaper than if you used API tokens from OpenAI and from Anthropic individually. With Cursor Ultra, you get access to all of the latest AI models. So open up Cursor and then you can select from Claude for Sonnet, O3, Gemini Pro, and so on. And if you turn on max mode, it will consume more tokens, but I found it will find and fix and code a lot faster and more efficiently. If you want to save some money, you can turn on auto, and Claude itself will decide what's the best agent for you and try and keep costs down. Clearly, this can get quite expensive, but it is possible to set restrictions inside of Cursor about how many tokens you're going to consume each month and what your bill is going to be. I also pay $10 per month for Copilot. Probably don't need Copilot if I have Cursor Ultra, but I do like trying the latest AI tools. If you're not familiar with Copilot and how it works with vibe coding, basically it gives you access to the latest models inside of VS Code. So you can see I have access to ChatGPT 4.1, as well as the latest premium models and some of the older models as well. Now, I did find it was faster to vibe code with an Ultra subscription for Cursor and max mode turned on. However, there were some quirks with VS Code versus Cursor, and sometimes I'd open up VS Code and want to use AI, for example, to help me with deployment issues. I have another video on the channel where I compare Cursor and VS Code for vibe coding, so be sure and check that out. But suffice to say, this only costs $10 per month, although I'm not sure I'm going to keep a subscription for this and also for Cursor. However, if you take out a Copilot subscription, you do get access to Copilot inside of GitHub as well. And this can be quite helpful if you want to avoid pulling down from your GitHub repo and you just want to make changes directly in GitHub and get access to Copilot. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with X. All of the clickbait and politics stresses me out, but I find that Grok can be quite useful if you want to get the latest information about something that's trending or in the news. So for example, I put in this prompt, what is the latest on MicroStrategy, which is a popular stock, and Grok was able to give me the latest updates on what's happening with MicroStrategy based on what other people are saying on X. So if you want to get real-time information about something, then Grok can be useful if you have a Twitter Premium subscription. But I don't tend to use it as much as some of the other AI tools that I've showed you. I also pay for a Perplexity subscription. Now, I like Perplexity because it's good for research. So as an example, I was recently purchasing a turbo trainer for my bike at home. Now, normally when I'm in a buying journey like this, I'd Google something like best turbo trainer and I'd wade through all of the Google results. But I found that Perplexity can be a bit of a time saver. So I put in a prompt into Perplexity and basically it collated information about all of the different turbo trainers for bikes from a variety of sources, including YouTube videos, forums, Reddit, and blog. And this basically dramatically cut down the amount of time I would have spent wading through post after post and story after story. So if you're doing anything that involves research, then either Grok or Perplexity are worth considering. I also pay for the Perplexity API. And you don't necessarily need to pay for the Perplexity API, but I use it for one of my vibe coding projects. So this is called the AI Flash Report, and basically it updates once per day about the latest developments in the AI space. I spent about 2 weeks vibe coding this earlier on last month. Now, a key feature in the AI Flash Report is this daily summary. This basically summarizes everything that's happening in AI on a given day. And this output does not come from me, it actually comes from a specific prompt that I wrote for Perplexity. I connected my vibe coding project to Perplexity with the API and managed all of this in GitHub. Now, I have another video on the channel where I give you some novel ways that you can use APIs. But suffice to say, this runs once per day and it consumes some of my tokens or credits via the Perplexity API. Now, to be honest, this doesn't cost me much. I topped my API up with $20 about 6 weeks ago, and I haven't had to top it up since. But if you're into vibe coding and you want to start using APIs, then Perplexity is something that you could check out. That's an overview of how I spent over $1,000 on AI tools last month. To be honest, I don't need all of them. If I had to refine my tool list, I'd probably stick with ChatGPT Pro for $20 and also Claude. I'd also probably keep a subscription to one vibe coding tool. Perhaps Cursor Ultra if I'm in the middle of a big project, and then when the project is finished, I'd probably downgrade to the $20 per month version. I would also keep some of my API subscriptions, so the tools I've already shipped keep working. But you may not need these, and it really does depend on your use case. I hope you enjoyed this particular video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my vibe coding playlist. And if you want to get some prompts that you can use to get better outputs from AI for your business, then check the link in the comment section below this video. Basically, I have 101 practical prompts that you can use for any AI tool. And finally, if you have questions about any of these tools, ask me in the comment section below.